Okay, ladies and gentlemen, 2 videos in one day, but I really wanted to get this out as soon as possible because it's happening this weekend. Super Strong Style 16. If you're not paying attention to British wrestling right now, pay attention to this tournament, to these 2 shows, because they are going to slap, and I'm about to do some awful, terrible predictions, and we will see how this goes. Hello and welcome to FTTR, I am Hugh McQuaid. Today we are talking about Progress Wrestling Super Strong Style 16, the huge tournament that is happening in the Electric Ballroom, Camden, London this weekend. There's a lot of wrestling this weekend. King of the Ring, Double or Nothing, and don't take your eyes off Super Strong Style 16 because this is going to be an incredible 2-night event, and I'm very excited to see how it plays out. For anyone who is unfamiliar, Super Strong Style 16 is a tournament that Progress Wrestling holds that has had winners of the likes of Tommy End, aka Malakai Black, Zack Sabre Jr, Will Ospreay. Some incredible talent have won this tournament. And we're going to see who it is this year. We're going to predict the entire tournament using the bracket. And I'm going to do terrible because last year I did a video about this and I did terrible. So we'll see how it goes. But before we dive into this, please hit subscribe, please like this video, please comment your thoughts down below on who you think is going to win this tournament. And I'll try and apply to every single one of them. As we dive into this, my face is going to go small right about now and you can see the bracket. These are the matches that we have got and this is how I'm going to predict them. We're going to start with the first match, Shelton Benjamin versus Leon Slater. Now, this is going to be a really great match. I feel like I haven't seen Shelton Benjamin wrestle in ages. It's so cool that he's part of this tournament. But sadly, Shelton, I have got Leon Slater advancing in this tournament and moving into the second round. I think this is going to be a really great match, but I think Leon Slater, he plays a part in where I think this tournament is going. So he is going to advance for me. And the next match of this bracket is Malakai Black taking on Man Like Dries. Now, last year I had Man Like Dries to win the tournament, and sadly that did not play out the way I wanted it to. I don't know anything about Malakai Black. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that name correctly, so apologies if I am not. But I'm going to have Blanc advance in this match because as much as I would love, it's very tempting. This bracket is probably the hardest to predict out of all of them because you could do Dries versus Benjamin, you could do Slater versus Dries, which would be a boisterous behaviour, friendly matchup. I think that could be really interesting. But I'm going to go with Blanc because I think from the few clips that I've seen in doing research for this video, him versus Slater could be incredibly cool. And I think that's going to be a match that takes place in the second round. Then we move on to the next stage of the bracket. We have Mike Santana taking on Connor Mills. Connor Mills is a really great heel here in the UK. Santana, formerly proud and powerful. Wow, managed to get that out there. Formerly with AEW. I've got Santana advancing here. I think it makes the most sense for him to, as much as I would like to see Connor Mills really pushed up the rankings and really go into that main event scene, because we could do with some really formidable heels to go up against Kid Lycos. But I'm going to go with Santana. Again, I think the direction of this tournament, I think where this could end up, I'm going with Santana picking up the win here. For the next match, we have Ricky Knight Jr. taking on Simon Miller. Now, as much as I love Simon Miller, and I do love Simon Miller, he is the nicest man in the world, I've got Ricky Knight Jr. picking up the win here. I don't think Simon loses anything by losing to RKJ, the former Atlas champion. I think RKJ is going to pick up the win. This is, no offense, Simon, but this is one of the easier ones to call. And I think the matchup of Santana versus RKJ will be really cool. Then we move on to the other side of the bracket. We have Luke Jacobs taking on Mike D. I don't really know much about Mike D either, but I'm going to go with Luke Jacobs. Luke Jacobs is an absolute machine right now, one of the best wrestlers in the world, let alone the UK. I think Luke Jacobs picks up the win here in what will probably be a really good match. And then we have one that looks like it'd be really fun, and that is Gene Money taking on Kid Lycos 2. Now, the prospect of Kid Lycos 2 going all the way and challenging Kid Lycos is a really cool prospect for me. I'm going to go with Gene Money on this one. I think the matchup between Jacobs and Gene is one that I want to see. I can't remember if that's happened before. Definitely not one that I've seen, but Luke Jacobs versus Gene Money is just that is a combination that is ready to explode. Just their styles together would be so electric to watch, and I think that'd be a really cool match. Sorry, Kid Lycos 2, but I'm going with Gene on this one. And then we have the final section of the bracket. We have Eddie Dennis taking on TK Cooper of Sunshine Machine. When I was at For the Love of Progress in Manchester, Eddie Dennis made it very clear that Super Strong Style 16 was something he wanted to win. And in that regard, I'm going with Eddie Dennis here. I think Eddie Dennis picks up the win and he advances. I think it makes sense for Eddie Dennis to advance. And TK Cooper, I love TK Cooper. Goddamn, I love Sunshine Machine, but I just think Eddie Dennis is going to pull off the win here. And the final match, this is one of the hardest ones to predict, is KC Navarro versus Tate Mayfairs. Tate Mayfairs, I originally had going all the way. I think you need a really cool heel to go up against Lycos, because the winner obviously gets a shot at the Progress World Championship. And I think KC Navarro and Tate Mayfairs is a very important match in dictating what happens with that. But I'm going with KC Navarro. I think Navarro is going to pick up the win over Tate Mayfairs, eliminate Mayfairs in the first round, and that will only fuel the rage of Tate Mayfairs going forward in Progress, which I think could be insanely fun. Now we move on to, I believe, the quarterfinals. I don't really do tournament lingo that well, but I think this is the quarterfinals, and then you have the semi-finals, then you have the finals. So I think this is the quarterfinals of Super Strong Style 16. We have Leon Slater versus Igal Blanc. I hope I'm pronouncing that right so badly. I've gone with Blanc on this one. I think Blanc going into the semi-finals lends a really interesting match that I think could happen. And I don't think Leon loses anything by being knocked out of this round. I think they'll put on a spectacular match. But I'm going with Blanc advancing to the semi-finals on this one. And my reasoning for doing that is because I think that in the matchup between Santana and RKJ, I'm going to go with RKJ, Ricky Knight Jr. picking up the win and advancing to the semis, leading to a really cool, really interesting sort of semi-final match that could really have ramifications going into that final. Santana doesn't lose anything at all, and we've seen it happen. We saw it last year. I think it was, I can't remember if it was the quarterfinals or the semi-finals where Ospreay got eliminated, but I don't think Santana loses everything. I think this will be really, really good, and I think it'll be hard-hitting, and I think RKJ picks up the win. And on the other side of the bracket, we have Luke Jacobs versus Gene Money. I'm going with Luke Jacobs on this one. I think Luke Jacobs picks up the win, destroying Gene Money in what I hope would be an absolute banger of a match. I think it'd be so fun. And yeah, Jacobs to the semi-finals all the way. And then we have the match between Eddie Dennis and KC Navarro. I've gone with KC Navarro in these predictions. I think that Eddie Dennis being knocked out in the quarterfinals, that's fine. I don't think Eddie Dennis should necessarily win Super Strong Style 16 this year. As much as I love him and he's a great wrestler, I think KC Navarro advancing with the few showings that he has had in Progress, this could really elevate his stock in Progress and on the global wrestling scene. So yeah, I'm going to go with KC Navarro advancing to face Luke Jacobs, and that is a mouth-watering match. If you've seen either of these guys wrestle, it is a mouth-watering match. Then we have my semi-finals. The semi-finals, I've got Igal Blanc taking on RKJ. Now, I've gone with RKJ on this. I think Ricky Knight Jr. picking up the win, advancing to the finals is perfect, because that man, since dropping the title, I didn't think his matches with the Atlas Championship were great. They were goddamn spectacular. I didn't think he had that much of a story, and I think the story here of really elevating him to that main event scene, getting him to the finals and overcoming the likes of Santana and Simon Miller and Igal Blanc, that is a really cool story for Ricky Knight Jr. And a really great performance in this tournament could set him up in Progress tremendously. So I've got RKJ advancing to the final. And over on the other side of the bracket, I have Luke Jacobs versus KC Navarro. I'm going to go with Luke Jacobs picking up the win over KC Navarro. I love KC Navarro, but my plan for Luke Jacobs is a heel turn. I think you could either do it in this match or you could do it in the final. I think giving Lykos a really big feud to sink his teeth into with a heel Luke Jacobs, kind of like the way Chris Ridgway sort of turned heel in the Super Strong Style 16 tournament. I think you could really do that with Luke Jacobs here and just have him destroy people on his way to Lykos, and that leads to a really personal feud over the Progress World Championship. I think that could be really interesting. Which then leads to our final. It leads to Luke Jacobs versus Ricky Knight Jr. And I've gone with Luke Jacobs. I think what I just said about the heel turn that I'd really love to see from Luke Jacobs, I think that could be done in this match. They had an absolute banger of a match. I think the Long Halloween, Ricky Knight Jr. and Luke Jacobs, where they had a tremendous hard-hitting Atlas Championship match, which Ricky Knight Jr. picked up the win in. Luke Jacobs getting the win here, not advancing, winning the damn thing, and cementing himself as, I can out-wrestle anyone. I won the Atlas tournament. I've won Super Strong Style. I will win any tournament that you put in front of me. And now, sorry Lykos, I'm coming for you. I think that could just make for really captivating stories going forward and having a really personal blood feud that both guys can sink their teeth into, maybe with Luke being the one to dethrone Lykos, makes all the sense in the world. And I think Ricky Knight Jr. getting to the finals will only spur on sort of the heat and the momentum that he has moving forward, and the sort of clawing himself back to get to the pinnacle of Super Strong Style and eventually winning it one day. I think that's the way to go. And my predictions are Luke Jacobs wins Super Strong Style 16 2024. But I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you agree? Do you not? Let me know everything, and I'll try and apply to every single one of them. Thank you all ever so much for your support, and have a nice day.